In today's episode of Walts Wanderings, we will visit the beaches of Normandy, France, where the D-Day landings took place in June of 1944. I've always had a great interest in history, thanks in part to a great history teacher I had in elementary school. And growing up in Pennsylvania, where I could see the actual locations of the Battle of Gettysburg, Valley Forge, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C., and its many historic sites. I've had a particular interest in World War II, given that my father and 5 of my uncles were in World War II, along with the fathers of many of my friends and many of my father's friends. So I certainly said yes when my friend proposed we go to Normandy to see Omaha Beach. After I attended the Barcelona Olympics in 1992, one of the friends with whom I had gone to the games wanted to go to Normandy. His father had landed on those dangerous beaches a few days after D-Day and eventually drove a tank in General George Patton's Third Army across France until his father was wounded in the Battle of the Bulge. That is my friend in front of the church that his father asked him to find, because that was where he had one of his first firefights of the war. Being interested in that momentous turning point of World War II, of course I said I'd go with him. Once, when that friend had visited me in California, we visited the museum and remnants of the training camp General Patton had in the desert, not far from Palm Springs, where my friend's father, along with thousands of other soldiers, trained for the tank battles of North Africa and beyond. George Patton was born and raised in San Gabriel, California, near Pasadena, and I once met a member of the Patton family who took me to the cemetery where many members of the Patton family are buried. The general is buried with his troops in Luxembourg. Many of the pillboxes and other fortifications, or the ruins of them, still remain along the French coast where the D-Day landings took place. There were signs instructing visitors to stay on the marked paths. There is still so much unexploded ordnance there that every few years someone who strays off the path dies contacting old explosives. Like the battlefields of Gettysburg and other places of great tragedy, a somber aura hangs over the beaches of Normandy. Something about having this beautiful coastline as the backdrop seems incongruous. People should be playing on the beach and children should be building sandcastles, but here those frivolous activities would seem disrespectful and sacrilegious. The day I visited was overcast and gray, which seemed more appropriate than if the weather had been happy and sunny. Of course, there are many plaques and memorials to the sacrifice of the many who died in these landings. Many of those plaques pay tribute to the Allies who landed here. Since Omaha Beach was a U.S. Army objective, there are many more plaques about the Americans, but there is mention of the Canadian and British troops as well. There is a church that was made famous in the movie The Longest Day, which depicts a real event when an American paratrooper's parachute got caught in the steeple and he hung there, helpless, watching the battle unfold below him. A mannequin is hung from the church to commemorate that event. That is the same church near where my friend's father fought. We also visited Punta Hoc, famous for the attack made by U.S. Army Rangers up a steep cliff under heavy fire to take some German gun positions up there. The remains of those pillboxes are stark reminders of the fierce fighting that took place. The shattered, reinforced concrete takes note of the fierce pounding these gun positions took from Allied planes and ships in an attempt to soften up these fortifications before the troops tried to come ashore. The whole area felt like an open grave, the scenes of the lovely coast contrasting with the barbed wire and guns and defenses meant to rip men apart. Because I didn't know I was going to Normandy until the last minute, I had not reserved a room anywhere, and of course, this was in the pre-cell phone and internet days, so it was difficult to book anything last minute. After trying unsuccessfully to get a room at several hotels, we ended up sleeping in the car in the parking lot at Omaha Beach. That's our rented white Citroen parked next to a monument. That is the only photo I have of that poor little car that we beat up so badly for weeks all over Spain and France, but that's a story for another day. I did not sleep well, perhaps because of trying to sleep in the small car, or perhaps the ghosts of the suffering of that place, I don't know. We visited some of the museums dedicated to the history of D-Day, some of which let us in for free because we were Americans. We saw some French farmhouses flying the American flag, and some had signs on their gateposts that said things like, "Thank you, USA, we gratefully remember." I never felt so good about being an American as I did in that part of France. The U.S. 1st Army Division spearheaded the charge up Omaha Beach, sustaining about 30% casualties within the first hour alone. My father later told me it would hurt him too much to visit that cemetery near Omaha Beach because so many of his friends are buried there. They were the U.S. 1st Division. I commented to my friend how perfectly maintained the U.S. military cemeteries were there, and he said, they damn well ought to be. This is the only thing this guy has to show for his 19 years of living, is this little patch of ground in France with his name on it. Good point. Field after field of manicured grass adorned with solemn white crosses and stars of David were indeed sobering. 2 years later, in 1994, the city of Santa Monica, California, staged a commemoration for the 50th anniversary of D-Day in conjunction with the French consulate in Los Angeles. The event included D-Day veterans as well as actual landing craft, ships, and aircraft used in those landings in 1944. Young soldiers assisted many of the elderly D-Day survivors as they came ashore from the landing craft. After seeing the actual sites of the landings, it was interesting to see this reenactment of sorts and some of the men who risked their lives on the beaches of Normandy, and hear these veterans praised by many officials, including some from a still grateful French nation. They had even set up some beach obstacles to make the sands of Santa Monica resemble the way the beaches of Normandy looked the morning of June 6, 1944, and would look familiar to anyone who has seen Saving Private Ryan, although that movie did not come out until 1998. There was a lot going on the beach, and the fading sunlight made it difficult to see some of the activities, and the sound system made it hard to hear some of the speeches and music, but it was still a good effort to honor the men who gave so much on that fateful day. And it was moving to see some of the actual veterans and see some of those actual ships and planes that won World War II. It was an honor to have seen these brave men, and knowing that as they aged, the chances to do so would be less and less each year. I was glad I made the effort to honor their sacrifice. Back at Normandy, I took a photo that still brings me to tears every time I see it. In the remnants of a pillbox at Punta Hoc, I watched an elderly man make something small and write something, but I couldn't tell what it was. But he had tears streaming down his cheeks as he worked, his hands shaking. I didn't want to intrude on his privacy to take his photo or to get too close until after he left. Then I took a photo of what he had inserted into a small slit in the damaged concrete. It was a cross with a red poppy, the symbol of fallen British soldiers, on which he had written, "One who has grown old remembers those who did not live to do so." Next time on Walts Wanderings, we'll visit the city I've called home for most of my life, San Diego, California, and take a look at some of the places that make it special. Like and subscribe so you can come along. And thank you for watching.